Hey everyone, and welcome back to Royalty Now. Today we're diving into the charms and tragedies of one of history's most famous queens, the last official queen of France. We'll explore her fascinating life and, at the end, reveal some recreations of her appearance. Early life. Marie Antoinette was born in Vienna, Austria, as Maria Antonia Josepha Joanna, though we'll refer to her as Marie or Marie Antoinette throughout this episode. She was the youngest daughter of 16 children born to Holy Roman Empress Maria Theresa and Francis, Duke of Lorraine, founders of the Habsburg-Lorraine dynasty. Their marriage was one of genuine love, a rarity in royal politics. Being the 15th child, Marie was somewhat overlooked in her early years, but her mother's large family proved politically valuable. As the daughters grew up, they became crucial marriageable pawns on the European stage, destined to strengthen alliances across royal houses. Despite this, Marie's childhood was relatively happy. She was raised alongside her older sister Maria Carolina, with whom she shared a lifelong bond. Although she had private tutors, Marie was not particularly well educated. By age 10, she struggled with the German language, but discovered a passion for music, excelling at the harp and flute, and noted for her beautiful voice. Marie's charm, grace, and compassion made her beloved by those around her. Ironically, she was never intended to be a high-status royal bride until a cruel twist of fate thrust her into that role. Four of her older sisters, initially slated for prestigious matches, either fell ill, died, or were disfigured by smallpox, leaving little Marie to take their place. Transition to France. As marriage negotiations with the Dauphin of France, Louis Auguste, moved forward, Maria Theresa began preparing her youngest daughter for life in France. Marie learned about French fashion, court etiquette, and how to be agreeable and obedient, all while maintaining an impeccable appearance. Louis Auguste, though French-born, was similarly prepared for a life of appearances. He too was trained to be agreeable and to conceal his thoughts. Their marriage was part of a larger political plan. After decades of rivalry, France and the Habsburg Empire sought peace. At just 14 years old, Marie left Austria forever. On the border between the two nations, she had to leave behind everything she knew, her ladies-in-waiting, her personal belongings, and even her beloved dog. Life in France begins. Marie and Louis were married in May 1770 at Versailles, a palace 12 miles outside Paris that served as both royal residence and a political hub. Life at Versailles was governed by strict etiquette. Couples couldn't even eat in private, a crowd would always be present. Courtiers weren't allowed to knock, they had to scratch on doors instead. Marie struggled to adjust, and anti-Austrian sentiment led some to accuse her of being a spy. Louis, young and timid, was inattentive, and their marriage remained unconsummated for 7 years, causing distress to Marie's mother, who worried about securing the dynasty. Queen of France. When King Louis XVI died on May 10, 1774, Louis Auguste became King Louis XVI at 19, and Marie, just 18, became Queen of France. Over time, the couple grew closer, and in December 1778, their first child, Marie-Thérèse, was born. Though not the son hoped for, the birth solidified their marriage in the eyes of the court. Versailles itself symbolized royal authority and extravagance. Louis XIV had spent half of France's income constructing it, and this opulence set the standard for court life. Marie indulged in music, dancing, gambling, and supporting composers like Chevalier de Saint George. She became famous for her fashionable hairstyles and elaborate dresses, defining the image of a French queen. Outside the palace, the Third Estate. Yet, beyond Versailles, France was in crisis. The Third Estate, nearly 90% of the population, bore the brunt of taxes while suffering from poverty, bad harvests, and bread shortages. A harsh winter in 1784 worsened their struggles, and resentment toward Marie grew. This period also gave rise to the infamous yet falsely attributed quote about bread, "Let them eat cake." In reality, Marie Antoinette never said this. It was propaganda meant to villainize her. It's important to remember that the monarchs of France, like King Louis, ruled under the principle of the divine right of kings, which meant they weren't truly accountable for their poor decisions, as God had placed them in their positions. However, the recent generations of monarchs had pushed France to the edge of bankruptcy. Hungry peasants began to question whether God had truly intended for them to starve while the king and queen lived in such luxury. Back at Versailles, Marie Antoinette had grown accustomed to the jewels and finery of her extravagant life, yet she longed for a simpler existence, away from the strict public ceremonies of the court. She requested that the Trianon Gardens be transformed into a rural model village known as the Queen's Hamlet, complete with cottages, a mill, and a small farm. This village became a point of criticism, with people accusing her and her friends of playing at being peasants. In reality, the farm was functional and created jobs for those who managed its production full-time. Like the false "let them eat cake" story, the Queen's Hamlet became central to the negative perception of Marie Antoinette. Though initially welcomed as a young and charming queen, public opinion gradually turned against her. Another incident often linked to her downfall was the diamond necklace affair. In 1772, Louis XV commissioned a lavish diamond necklace for his mistress, Madame du Barry. The piece was so extravagant it took years to complete, and before it could be paid for, Louis XV died of smallpox. The jewelers then offered it to Louis XVI as a gift for Marie, but she refused, arguing that France needed ships more than diamonds. Later, a fraudster named Jean forged Marie's signature, spreading false rumors that she had ordered the necklace and refused payment. Jean was convicted, but the damage to Marie's reputation was done, and this scandal became one of the last straws in turning public opinion against her. By the time the French Revolution began, she was seen as a symbol of excess and a figurehead of the vast class divide. Revolutionaries stormed the Bastille, a symbol of royal authority and a political prison. In the following days, many high-ranking nobles fled Versailles and urged the royal family to do the same. Yet Louis, still believing in his popularity, refused to leave, and Marie would not abandon him either. A furious mob arrived at Versailles and tore down its golden gates, demanding to see the king and queen. Marie quickly gathered her children and hid in the king's bedchamber, barely escaping the mob. Once the guards regained control, the crowd reformed outside, but instead of fear, Marie displayed calm defiance as she appeared on the balcony. The people, surprised by her composure, began to cry out, "Long live the Queen!" Soon after, the mob demanded that the royal family leave Versailles, and King Louis complied. They were escorted to the Tuileries Palace under guarded house arrest, and Marie realized their only remaining option was to leave France. In the summer of 1791, Marie finally convinced Louis to attempt escape in what became known as the Flight to Varennes. Disguised as a valet and governess, they fled in a carriage, but poor timing and Louis's slow judgment led to their recognition and capture, and they were returned to Paris. Louis's credibility as king was lost forever. The royal family was imprisoned at the Temple prison on August 13, 1792. By September 1, 1792, the monarchy was officially abolished and the National Convention assumed power, preparing for trials. On January 15, 1793, Louis XVI was tried, condemned, and executed by guillotine. Marie learned of his death only when given his wedding ring. She remained in prison for months, mourning deeply and isolated from the outside world, still holding out hope that she and her children might be allowed to leave into exile. Her initial charges were not for execution, but on October 14, 9 months after Louis's death, Marie Antoinette was brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. She was swiftly found guilty of depleting the national treasury, conspiring against the state, and committing high treason. 2 days later, Marie was dressed in a simple white gown, her hair was cut, and her hands were bound. Marie was paraded through Paris to the guillotine, where at 12:15 p.m. she was executed. her final words recalling her polite nature when she accidentally stepped on her executioner's toe. "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Marie was informed of his death only when they handed her his wedding ring. She remained in prison for several months, plunged into deep mourning and completely isolated from the outside world, yet she held on to hope that she and her children might be allowed to go into exile. Her initial charges were not for execution, but on October 14th, 9 months after Louis's death, Marie Antoinette was brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. She was swiftly found guilty of depleting the national treasury, conspiring against the state, and committing high treason. 2 days later, Marie was dressed in a simple white gown, her hair was cut, and her hands were bound. Marie was paraded through Paris to the guillotine, where at 12:15 p.m. she was executed, her final words recalling her polite nature when she accidentally stepped on her executioner's toe. "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Although Marie undoubtedly played a significant role in the events leading to the revolution, over time she has received a great deal of sympathy for the disproportionate blame placed on her. I personally view her more as a tragic figure than a malicious one. Her story continues to captivate us today, symbolizing the conflict of social classes. Born into privilege, she found herself in the wrong place at the wrong time. While her life ended tragically, the fall of the monarchy paved the way for a new era, a free France. Now, what did Marie Antoinette actually look like? One of the key sources for my recreations, and arguably the most accurate reference for her appearance, is the supposed death mask taken shortly after her execution. The mask was created by a waxworker whose name you might recognize, Madame Tussaud. She had previously worked for the Queen, crafting likenesses of her living relatives. Tussaud took masks of Marie and other executed revolutionaries to create exhibitions. These masks provided a unique, real-time commentary on the political events and executions during the revolution. Death masks, traditionally made from wax or plaster, have been used for thousands of years to preserve the faces of the deceased before photography existed. While they were typically made for relatives or friends, Tussaud was the first to commercialize the practice. Marie may not be considered a modern classic beauty, but she had very attractive facial features and was considered quite pretty for her era. She also had the Habsburg dropped lip, a slightly protruding lower lip, which was often minimized or omitted in official portraits. The death mask gives a more accurate depiction of this feature, though it's not extremely pronounced. What fascinates me about Marie is seeing the difference between her portraits and the death mask. In the portraits, her lips are fuller and more stylized, reflecting the artistic trends of the time. She had striking blue, wide-set eyes, which were exaggerated in paintings, while the mask shows a more realistic size. Her nose was slightly more hooked than depicted in her portraits. Beneath the elaborate powdered wigs, Marie's hair was reportedly blonde, sometimes with a strawberry blonde hue. For the recreations, I created a composite image based on both her portraits and the death mask. The goal was to present Marie in her prime, as the Queen of France before the strain of the Revolution aged her. Now, let's take a look at the recreations of Marie Antoinette. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the Etsy store for prints and bookmarks of these recreations. You can also sign up for our newsletter at royaltynowstudios.com to get early access to new subjects before they appear on YouTube. We'll see you in the next video.